The Feds are poking around Mark Walter's finances, and meanwhile, the Lakers are looking for center depth. Those two things are not necessarily related, but they're both interesting. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for stopping by Locked On Potential Insurance Fraud. I'm Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Interesting stories breaking out on, Tuesday afternoon. Kind of a follow-up, actually, of a story that we had heard about a little while ago, but a little more information added to it about Mark Walter. We'll dig into that. We'll talk a little bit about the Lakers looking for a little more big man depth. And probably start a conversation, or at the very least hint at a conversation about where the Lakers stand inside the Western Conference. But Andy, before we do, how much do you know about insurance fraud?
I know enough to know that you are correct that this investigation by the Feds into Mark Walter is not directly linked to whatever questions about big man depth. Like I know that much. The rest of it, I would say I have read two articles about this, one from the LA Times, one from the Wall Street Journal, at least 3 times, and I feel no more qualified to talk about this than before I read either article once, much less 3 times.
The Journal reported on Tuesday that the initial impetus for this investigation, which started more than a year ago, I believe, with the federal government, was initiated by a whistleblower. My theory, it was Deandre Ayton, and that's why he was traded. I could be wrong about that, so please don't aggregate. But this from the Journal. We're just going to go ahead and read some stuff. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan and the Securities Exchange Commission are now examining how around $16 billion in loans extended to companies tied to Walter or his conglomerates, TWG Global, which just stands for the Walter Group, wound up on the books of insurance companies he owns after passing through a third entity. People familiar with the matter said the authorities are trying to determine whether the activity constituted fraud, one of the people said. This is actually, I found, quite helpful from the Financial Times, just explaining why this matters. Essentially what they are, it's my understanding in this, because I am not exactly an expert in this area either, is it has to do with your liability in terms of insurance and life insurance and things like that, which is the Delaware Life Company, which is something that Mark Walter owns. When companies,
like everything,
yeah, I mean, he just kind of owns everything.
Yeah.
Disclosures from some of the largest analysts, regulators, and investors scrutinize, again, this is from the Financial Times, life insurers' levels of affiliated holdings, meaning like the loans that are given out that are part of the company that is related to the insurance company, because concerns they might be storing underappreciated risks. In particular, they argue that related party investments, in this case, stuff having to do with, I believe it was Dodgers tickets and other things, can create conflicts of interest and disadvantage insurance policy holders. This is because the assets may be bought or sold at the wrong valuations without a market price, and because insurers owned by asset managers may hold back from playing hardball with their parent company if the debt needs restructuring. So there are rules around how much of this affiliated holdings, levels of affiliated holdings companies are supposed to have, how those things should be disclosed. And as far as I can tell, that is what the Feds are investigating, whether or not Mark Walter and his group and his company were intentionally misrepresenting these things. That is as deep into this as we're going to get in terms of the forensic explanations. And there's not a whole lot to report about it. I suspect this is going to take a bit of time to sort out, but it is not irrelevant when the owner of the team is under federal investigation.
Which do you think wraps up first, the Fed's investigation of Mark Walter or the NBA's of Steve Ballmer?
Yeah, this whole aspiration thing or whatever. I think the Mark Walter, like the Kawhi trade, will not happen before this thing is done.
Steve Ballmer's looking at Adam Silver
forever.
Steve Ballmer's looking at Adam Silver like, "Hey, look, man, I just broke CBA rules, but unlike this guy, like the actual law is not in question right now." So
all I know is that I saw on Instagram today Mark Walter planting like a bunch of trees. I don't know what that means. I don't know if those things are related, but here we are. So again, this is not something that we are qualified to even really dig into much, but it's obviously important and
could explain though why the Dodgers
keep an eye on.
Could explain though why the Dodgers did go through with the White House visit, because you can never kiss ass enough in this sort of situation. You always want to stay on the good side of the government that may be investigating you.
The president was the first recipient of the Guggenheim Peace Prize. And that seems to have solved everything.
Again, always cover your bases. That is as far into politics or finance that we will get on this show.
It's a joke, and
yes, everyone relax.
We all understand the tone that it was set in. So anyway, let's get back to the basketball portion of it. Dan Wakey, one of the interesting things about this Deandre Ayton deal is that at the time, and we got into this a little bit on Tuesday's show. At the time it was made, Andy, there was the idea that it was done with something that was like quick to follow. I think we were all waiting for that next shoe to drop. And we kind of kept staring at the sky for the shoes, and we're waiting for shoes and all. There are no shoes. The shoe has not fallen yet. But it has left the Lakers it did leave the Lakers with a big hole at backup center, because as many questions as there were around Deandre Ayton and his willingness to play that role effectively, a guy who's never been a backup, doesn't want to be a backup, presumably. He's certainly quite good, a luxury as a backup center. They replaced him right now with Kevon Looney, who why do you think the Lakers focused on Looney first and foremost? Because I'm curious if my theory lines up with your theory.
Well, my original theory, which I threw out, I want to say the first day that we talked about Looney, like in reaction to this news, was that he could be a mentor for Jonathan Kuminga.
Which hasn't happened yet, but
I'm just saying that was one of the first things, if not the first thing that came to mind to me, just because, I mean, other than the idea, and I think this part of it will be legit with or without Jonathan Kuminga, they could use an older presence on this team, somebody with leadership skills. Kevon Looney is the only guy on this team with rings. He obviously was not, the core part of the engine with Golden State's dynasty, or however you want to frame their 4 championships. He was part of 3 of them, but he's somebody that was, I think, considered having cachet, and somebody that people took seriously and respected. And for a team this collectively young, there was seen some value with that. And I think also there is a hope that last season with New Orleans, which was not a good year for Kevon Looney, he was injured a lot. Other than, I think, rebounding and some reasonably good shot blocking, it was not a great season for him. I think the hope is that is more exception, outlier that proves the rule. He's been largely pretty healthy for his career. Like, he's not dealt with tons of injuries. So last year, hopefully, is just the one off year in what's otherwise been a reasonably productive career for a guy at his station.
So, all right. After let's get into this, and because your basic outline of what attracted the Lakers to Looney, it basically aligns with mine. I think, I'll talk about it a little bit more here in a sec, but it means too that the Lakers still have a hole there that they didn't necessarily expect Looney to fill. So we'll talk about that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a homer in their game. And if you're right, you receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with everyday's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep, and now you get the chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. Like, there's some players, certain ones, where every at-bat feels like something big could happen. For example, if you're a Dodger fan, think of a guy whose name rhymes with Ohei Shotani. He hit a home run, at least one, Tuesday night as we record this, and that's what makes Daily Dingers fun.
More pig Latin than rhyming, I think.
Well, it's both, really. It's both big Latin and rhymes. Every day brings fresh matchups, new storylines. Daily Dingers gives you another reason to pay attention before the first pitch. So you're ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball, swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of MLB.
Okay, so you and I, Andy, are basically aligned. I agree that the Lakers' primary attraction to Looney was, I think there's an element of consistency there. Like, you know what he's going to do when he's on the floor, how well he'll do it. You're not necessarily sure at this point in his career, but you know what you're getting. And what you're getting is a guy who's going to rebound. He's going to be where he's supposed to be, or at least try to be where he's supposed to be defensively. And then from there, it is the question of leadership. It is a matter of a guy who really is able to be a voice in the locker room, be well respected, all of that stuff, which I agree. Like, he is, you know, the oldest player on the team. He's that veteran voice. And the Lakers lost a lot of that, not just with LeBron, but with Marcus Smart and players like that. And they need to replace it.
Smart in particular, I think that absence is really important.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. So that is something that the Lakers needed to replace. That said, you particularly given, and I think Walker Kessler's injury history is a little bit overstated only because the Jazz, I think particularly last year, kind of went out of their way to not put him back on the floor. And over the last couple of years, have not tried very hard. You know, guys don't push through injuries. They've been very willing to shut down injured players, whether actually injured or, you know, kind of injured. So we'll see. But if you had a stretch where the Lakers needed, you know, Kessler's going to miss 10 games in February and March, you don't feel great about sticking Kevon Looney in the starting lineup to do it. You want a little bit of an upgrade. So along those lines, Andy, Dan Wakey at The Athletic, writing about this, put out kind of a list of the types of players that are available, and they're not super inspiring. You know, it's players. These aren't players that necessarily the Lakers are connected to, but they are the types of players that you could theoretically try to get. Nick Richards is a free agent right now. Drew Eubanks, Xavier Tillman, those guys are unsigned. Jericho Sims is seen as available on the Bucks. Jalen Smith on the Bulls. You know, players like that. Is there anybody out there that you think kind of even slightly addresses this issue for the Lakers?
No. I mean, if I'm being honest, no, I don't think there's anybody out there that frankly represents a considerable upgrade as a backup than Mamu. Like, I really feel like Mamu is or should be penciled in as the primary backup to Walker Kessler at the 5. Like, if I have to choose between, say, Looney getting those minutes, or somehow, you'd have to reconfigure the roster because they already have one too many players as it is, but finding a way to bring in Nick Richards, who, I've been a proponent of in the past, but the last couple seasons, he's been somewhat underwhelming. Jericho Sims, I don't
still
think
probably a better player than Looney.
Well, sure, but the point being, though,
sure,
I would like all the names that we brought up, or a guy like Bismack Biyombo or Drew Eubanks or some of these other guys that could be available. I don't think they'd be able to get Jalen Smith. I would rather just play Mamu, and frankly, I think they should be playing Mamu. Like I have always seen Mamukelashvili as much more of not just an option for the Lakers as a backup five, but a better fit as a backup five than the minutes he would spend at the four. Like, I just think that's a better use for him anyway. So to me, it really starts turning into a question of either do you just not think Kevon Looney is a good enough third string center, or do you really just want to play Mamu more minutes at the four, and therefore you're trying to plan for that? Again, I would disagree with that approach, but then I would at least understand the impetus of it, even if I disagreed.
Well, yeah, I just think a lot of it just is they don't think Looney is good enough to really rely on as a backup center to provide more than spot minutes. It's like a few years ago, like Jared, like I see Looney in a lot of ways as probably a better version of, but a lot like Jared Dudley, where like the Lakers didn't really play Dudley much, but they just felt very comfortable when like they did for like, you had a 3-game stretch where he was going to play 15 minutes. And like, you knew exactly, you could go 6 weeks without barely seeing Jared Dudley and put him in the game and know exactly what he was going to provide for you. And in the meantime, he's doing all that other stuff in the locker room that helps bring things together. Great practice player, great role model for young players, all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of that there. The issue with Mamu, I think, is interesting because what you're really talking about there too, Andy, I think, is like this, like the need to go get a forward, because it's harder to play Mamu as a backup at the 4 and the 5 if you don't have a starting caliber 4. And so, or let me rephrase, a 4 that you feel really comfortable with. I mean, do you think right now, if the season started today, that Mamu would start at the 4, or they would pick from the alternatives?
Unless they're going to let finances and the contract number dictate the decision, which I always think is a bad way to do it. Agreed. To me, I mean, unless you're talking about a guy making like 25 plus mil, I feel like if you can justify Mamu's salary as a reserve, then the money's well spent. Like, I don't think the fact that Mamu's contract is whatever, like 5th or 6th highest on the team, should necessitate where you would put him in the rotation. I personally feel like we've talked about this before. The Lakers have a lot of imperfect options to start at that spot right now. So I would approach it based on what do I think is most needed alongside the other 4 guys that I think everyone's expecting to start, which is Luka, Austin, Grimes, and Kessler. I would look first and foremost to add a defensive presence as possible and a bigger body if possible, which is why I would probably start LaRavia among the options that we have right now in like a 18 to 20 minute role. I've compared it before to in 2000, the first of the three-peat teams. AC Green was the starting 4 for that team, but he played about 20 minutes a night, and Robert Horry played just as many minutes as he did off the bench, but it was just the best way to manage the rotation and the best way to get the most out of everybody there and come up with the best floor combinations. And, you figure out the closing group as you need it. And look, maybe somebody like Adu turns out ready enough for like a 10 to 12 minute a night role. And if that's the case, he actually maybe could be a live possibility among 4 of the better players on this team, but also 4 guys that have the offense more or less covered. And if that's the case, then I feel like you could actually get away with with that grouping, assuming he's ready to go out there, just be a defensive and energy and disruptive presence.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Well, I'm sort of aligned with what you're getting at. Like, to me, it feels like, where do you feel like Mamu is going to serve your team best? Like, do you feel like he's going to be best as, in that backup 4 and 5 spot? He's going to be playing a lot of minutes. I'd be surprised if he played, much significantly less than, 25 minutes a night, somewhere between 20 and 25 a night, possibly even a little bit more, which is big minutes. So he's going to play a lot, but it's against what players and in what alignments and in what combinations. Do you think he's going to be more effective or less effective with Kessler around him? Does he, what role do you think suits him best? And I think to sacrifice his performance because you feel a little certain, whether I agree with you, the money is the dumbest reason to do it, but like, you're not, it's sort of like when we talked on Tuesday about like Thibault might be one of your better on-ball defenders, despite the fact that it's not his forte. But to use him that way kind of robs you of why you signed him in the first place. If that's the feeling, then start LaRavia, start Thero, do some sort of 4 by committee that works for you, and align Mamu in the best way that you can for his skill set. So we can keep talking about this. We can look a little bit more at these questions around where the Lakers might, who the Lakers might try to get, whether or not it's worth using any draft capital on somebody like Jericho Sims. Can also poke around and talk a little bit about where the Lakers fit in the Western Conference. We'll start getting into all that stuff next.
All right, so Brian is messing with his Wi-Fi right now, trying to get a better connection. But the way I feel right now with, this question of backup 5, which again, I see Mamu as the obvious guy for this role. I think he'll play sometime at the 4. And I do think there are ways that the Lakers can and should look to play Kessler and Mamu together because, they've got inside-outside ability together. You could really shore up the rebounding with the 2 of them together. Like both of us really like the Mamu signing. We've said as much, like we really think in particular his ability as an offensive wheel greaser and somebody who falls into the dribble pass shoot that JJ is looking to see more of from his players moving forward. I think Mamu fits really well there. And I think Brian agrees too. I think he's better suited. I just think he's better used as a 5 versus a 4. But I also kind of feel like if they're not confident with Mamu in that role, then I actually start questioning the signing because he's not somebody that over his career has been a proven option as a starter, period, much less as a power forward. So like it's always been my assumption. I know there have been people who've penciled in Mamu as the starting 4, and I understand it because he does profile as a stretch big. But I've just never pictured that ending up his role, and particularly, too, when you think about what's needed to support Luka and Austin in particular defensively, I think Mamu is more additive to some of the defensive issues than a solvent. So I would just look for, like I mentioned before, LaRavia, who I think Mamu is a better player than LaRavia, but LaRavia is a better fit for what you may need with the other 4 guys than Mamu, even though I think Mamu's better than him.
Well, it's interesting. I don't think
when Lamar Odom came off the bench with the Kobe Powell teams, Lamar was the 3rd best player on that team. He was better than a few guys starting ahead of him, but
and played 30-something minutes a night.
Right, but it worked best for the entire rotation to play Lamar off the bench.
I look at it. I think the Lakers obviously did this with the idea that Mamu was going to play minutes next to Kessler. Like he's going to play some power forward minutes. That doesn't mean he needs to start. But like you can't sign Kessler to that deal and then Mamu to that slot and not think that those guys are going to be able to play together, because it just doesn't make any sense from a construction standpoint.
Agreed.
But again, like when we did the scouting report on Mamu, that was one of the things. Like there is he's never played more than 25 minutes a night. He's always been what he did last year, I think at 22, basically essentially 23, I think it was, is as by far the most he's played. And he's always been an analytics kind of darling, like the per minute production from him and all that stuff. But it is not uncommon with players like that to reach a place where you hit the sort of the ceiling of that, where you pass the 23 minutes a night of Mamu is, with the right combinations, is a super positive experience. 29 minutes is too much. And so what the Lakers need to make sure they do is don't go past that threshold. You got to make you have to. It's going to be the same with Colin Sexton. It's going to be the same with Quentin Grimes. It's going to be the same with a lot of these guys. Thero, I think, matches in there. Carr matches in there. What are the right combinations and what are the sweet spots? It's interesting. Like Magic was tweeting the other day, and amidst all of the exclamation points and somewhat obvious opinions, he did make the note, like, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, like the Lakers are going to have to probably be a little bit patient at the beginning of the season. Like this, to say this is a new team is a vast understatement. Like you're talking about Luka and Reeves, and that's basically it in terms of your core players. Obviously, LaRavia was around last year, Vando, Bronny. I mean, but like, how many of your top 8 are brand new, this season? So it's going to take both a minute for those guys to figure out how to play together. But more importantly, it's going to take a little bit of time for the coaching staff to really settle on the best way to put everybody together. It's why this conversation, maybe we'll have it tomorrow, maybe we'll have it for Friday, about what is the state of the Western Conference. It's actually one of the reasons why that conversation is so important, because while I think the Lakers, we saw ESPN's power rankings, I think they had the Lakers at 6th in the conference right now, which it's fine. Like it's ballpark where they belong. That could be backloaded. Like you would expect them to be a better team in January and February than you would expect them to be in October and November.
Maybe, but at the same time, it is worth remembering, while we're not talking about a team that had as much turnover, the Lakers got off to a good start last year, even with LeBron dealing with the sciatica, but also Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton and Jake LaRavia, all as new guys, and Luka and Austin having spent relatively little time playing together, because Luka was, only had half a season with the Lakers and he was hurt for some of it. So, and I think, again, this year's team has less continuity than that team that began the season last year, but that team still had a lot to figure out. And I remember you and I both were displeased that it felt like they did not use training camp to maximum capacity in terms of really trying to get those reps under their belt. And I believe they got off to a 10-4 start.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the criticism obviously was they were playing, the AAU squads of the.
Well, we don't know who the Lakers are going to play either to open this. We don't know the schedule yet.
I mean, it would be nice if the NBA could throw a few, Sacramento's in there at the beginning of the season. Trying to think of the garbage teams in the Eastern Conference, because Washington in theory is trying much harder to be good this year.
80 revenge game.
It could be. Like it was so fun. That was my favorite of like the last of the Rui bits, where that clip that was circulating where Rui was talking about how when they played Washington at the crypt,
Yeah.
and he saw AD there, and he was like, he'd forgotten that Anthony Davis was a Wizard.
Rui was very low-key, underrated funny on the
Oh, I
Lakers. He had a
agree,
really
100%.
good sense of humor.
But so like my brain is not, I haven't recalibrated based on the offseason, like who's good and who's bad. And the Western Conference, I think in particular, we'll get into it again, not to preview the conversation. Like there aren't a lot of, that sort of, is it as top heavy as it used to be? Maybe not. There aren't a lot of terrible teams in the conference either. So that part of it is kind of interesting. But yeah, like it would not kill the Lakers to have a few easier teams at the beginning of the season. I'm really excited for a coaching staff that seemed to make some strides, and especially obviously starting with JJ. And if I had to guess, and we'll learn more about this at media day and this training camp opens and stuff, I am guessing that Redick is super excited about the prospect of figuring this riddle out, of putting this brand new group together with all of these guys, with Luka truly as the center of things, with a core amount of players that are under contract for another 3 or 4 seasons, and doing like this is a different test for Redick. But like if you're a Lakers fan looking for what is like the next measurement of who this guy is and all that, like this season is gonna be a great one for that. Like how quickly does he find the right combinations and learn to use these players in combination with each other in ways that maximize their capacity to play the roles they want.
Yeah, swinging it back also to what we were talking about before with the big man conversation, stuff like that, and how the rotation is going to break down. I've seen Dan's article pointed this out as well, but I've heard other people who cover the team and obviously fans talk about how they've got nobody behind Kessler. If Kessler goes down, they could be in a lot of trouble, and that speaks to why they need a better backup. The truth is, if Kessler goes down, they're not just screwed in terms of however important you think that position is for this team. They're screwed, but also the options to make themselves less screwed were so few and far between to begin with. Like if you really were that worried about what happens if Kessler goes down, then you truly couldn't trade Ayton. Like you actually can't justify it. By the way, this is not me being critical of that trade. I think it's still ultimately TBD. And if they end up making use of those picks and or Jaden Hardy to bring in somebody at position X, then I think it's fine. Like the effect of it right now is very much TBD. But you brought in Walker Kessler to be a massive part of this team, which means by definition, if he's hurt, you're not going to likely be able to find anybody that can replicate what made him so valuable in the first place.
Oh, you become a completely different team. Right, you probably slide Mamu over to start at center, and essentially you still play him 25 minutes a night, and for the rest of it, you become a small ball team with trying to use the length of guys like Williams and the athleticism of guys like Thero and to just be a really, really you get a lot of Lakers have one viable center, but they've got a lot of length on this team now. And they're with the players that they brought in. And so you work that way as essentially a centerless team.
Yeah, I mean, like I've seen, Daniel Gafford still comes up as, what about going after him? And to me, Gafford makes too much money for a team that has Walker Kessler on it. And you'd be looking at like $50 million a season invested in 2 guys who can only play center, one of whom in Gafford, his minutes are going to be fairly capped because otherwise, why is spending all this money on Kessler? Like you start getting into the same version of, Anthony Davis wants a center and He is a center. He is the guy. Not that Kessler's.
The difference is at least AD could play power forward.
I mean, not as well as he thinks he is, but
no, but
better than Daniel Gafford. Yes, better than Daniel Gafford. Point taken. But you understand what I mean? Like you can't, on a team with Walker Kessler, in my opinion, you cannot justify a backup center making almost $20 million a year.
No,
like you can't do it.
You have to have a guy, if you're going to trade for somebody like that, it needs to be like when the Lakers were looking to pair Miles Turner with, AD, or so it has to be somebody who can play both positions.
Yeah. You can't play Kessler.
Those guys have to be able to play together.
Right. Kessler and Gafford cannot play together. Like we talked about Mamu and Kessler. They can play together. I just wouldn't play them necessarily big minutes together, but they can play together. Kessler and Gafford
offensively, it'd actually be great. Defensively, It would be a problem, but
Kessler
you can do it. Kessler and Daniel Gafford is not a choice.
That's a mess on
PJ
both sides.
Washington makes sense, but not Daniel Gafford.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so maybe we still have never really put kind of an endpoint on sort of LeBron's tenure in LA. Both of us have some thoughts about sort of how the relationship he had with fans and what that means looking forward to Luka and just the next generations of stars, whether or not being a star in LA can look the same as it used to, given the changes in the leagues. We have some thoughts about that. We'll get into some of these questions about where the Lakers stand relative to the rest of the conference and why that matters. All of that stuff coming up over the course of the rest of the week. Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can hang out with over 38,000 subscribers. Do make sure you are subscribing, though, to the audio product, both on Spotify, Apple. If you can subscribe to it anywhere, subscribe to it so you never miss a thing. We'll see everyone tomorrow.